Today, Iran may have crossed a line the world has feared for decades. Iran has reportedly launched a large-scale missile attack directly on Israel. Not through proxies, not indirectly, but head-on. This comes after the reported killing of Ali Larijani, a powerful and influential figure in Iran's political and strategic leadership. His death has triggered what Iran is calling a decisive and calculated retaliation. But what makes this moment different from anything we've seen before is not just the scale of the attack. It's the target. Iran reportedly fired hypersonic Fatah missiles and long-range ballistic systems directly at Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries. These are not military bases. These are the companies responsible for building Israel's entire defense architecture. Rafael produces Iron Dome, David Sling, Spike missiles, and even next-generation systems like Iron Beam. Israel Aerospace Industries manufactures Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, the very systems designed to intercept incoming ballistic missiles in the upper atmosphere and even in space. In other words, Iran did not aim at the shield. It aimed at the factory that builds the shield. And this changes everything. At the same time, reports from U.S. officials suggest that Israel is already running critically low on missile interceptors, the very systems these companies produce. That means this strike is not just symbolic, it's strategic. Iran has labeled this operation as part of True Promise 4, specifically Wave 55, signaling a sustained and ongoing campaign rather than a one-time response. The weapons reportedly used include Fatah hypersonic missiles, Imad long-range ballistic missiles, Ghadr missiles, and attack drones, a combination designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defense systems. And now the question is no longer whether this conflict will escalate. The question is how far it will go. The reported strike took place during an already escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. Over the past several weeks, tensions had been rising steadily. But this moment marked a clear shift, not just in intensity, but in strategy. Missiles were launched in coordinated waves, targeting central regions and key infrastructure. Explosions were reported across multiple areas. Fires broke out almost immediately. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, working under pressure as more alerts continued. Civilians were forced into shelters as sirens echoed across cities. This was not random. This was organized, and it was designed to send a message. The weapons used in this attack are among the most advanced in Iran's arsenal. At the center is the Fatah missile, described as a hypersonic system. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, it can maneuver during its descent, making it extremely difficult to intercept. Alongside it, Imad and Ghadr missiles were reportedly used. These are long-range ballistic systems capable of delivering heavy payloads over significant distances. In addition, attack drones were deployed. These drones can be launched in large numbers, forcing defense systems to engage multiple targets at once. This creates saturation. And saturation is one of the most effective ways to overwhelm even the most advanced defense networks. To understand the significance of this attack, it's important to understand the targets. Rafael Advanced Defense Systems is responsible for building Iron Dome, a system designed to intercept short-range rockets. It also produces David Sling and advanced systems like Iron Beam. Israel Aerospace Industries develops Arrow 2 and Arrow 3. These systems are designed to intercept ballistic missiles at high altitudes, even outside the atmosphere. Together, these companies form a layered defense network. By targeting them, Iran is not just attacking infrastructure, it is targeting the entire defense system. One of the most critical aspects of this situation is the reported shortage of interceptors. Intercepting a missile requires advanced systems and precise timing, and each interceptor is expensive. During previous conflicts, large numbers were used in a short period of time. Now, with continuous waves of attacks, the demand has increased even further. Production cannot be scaled instantly. This creates a growing gap between supply and demand. This conflict is not just military, it is economic. Iran's strategy appears to rely on cost imbalance. Relatively low-cost drones and missiles are being used to force the use of extremely expensive interceptors. Over time, this creates financial pressure. Even successful defense comes at a high cost, and in a prolonged conflict, that cost becomes a major factor. This attack represents a strategic shift. Instead of focusing only on immediate targets, Iran appears to be targeting long-term capabilities. The pattern suggests a sequence. First, detection systems, then defense layers, then production facilities. This is not random, it is systematic. The impact of this conflict extends beyond the region. Key shipping routes are under pressure. Air travel is being disrupted. Energy markets are reacting. Oil prices are rising. This is no longer a localized situation. It has global consequences. This conflict highlights a shift in modern warfare. Traditional defense systems rely on predicting trajectories, but newer weapons are unpredictable. They move differently, they behave differently, and they challenge existing systems. This represents a new phase in military technology. What we are witnessing is more than a single event. It is a shift, a transformation in how conflicts are fought. The systems that once defined defense are now being tested, and the outcome remains uncertain. The situation has continued to evolve rapidly over the past several hours, and what we are seeing now suggests that this conflict is not slowing down, it is adapting. Following the initial wave of strikes targeting key defense production facilities, new reports indicate that Iran has maintained pressure through continued missile launches and drone activity. While the volume of attacks may not match the intensity of the earliest waves, the consistency is what stands out. This is no longer about a single overwhelming strike. It is about sustained pressure over time. Israeli defense systems are still active, and interceptions are ongoing. However, the pattern that analysts are beginning to focus on is not just how many missiles are intercepted, but how many are getting through. Even a small percentage of successful impacts can have a disproportionate effect when the targets are strategic. At the same time, the psychological impact of continuous alerts, sirens, and uncertainty is becoming a factor. Civilian populations are being forced to adapt to repeated disruptions, and infrastructure is being tested not just physically, but operationally. On the military side, Israel appears to be recalibrating its response. While official statements remain controlled and measured, there are increasing indications that planning is underway for a more direct and possibly larger scale counteraction. This could include strikes on missile launch sites, storage facilities, or command structures. But there is a complication. The nature of the targets Iran has chosen has introduced a new layer to the conflict. By focusing on production capabilities rather than just deployed systems, Iran is attempting to affect not just the present, but the future. If production is slowed, damaged, or disrupted, the ability to replenish interceptor stockpiles becomes uncertain. And in a prolonged conflict, that uncertainty can become critical. At the same time, reports continue to circulate regarding interceptor availability. While exact numbers are not publicly confirmed, the concern is not necessarily about immediate depletion, but about sustainability. Interceptors are not just expensive, they are complex. Manufacturing them involves advanced materials, precision engineering, and time. Even with increased funding and emergency measures, scaling production quickly is a challenge. This creates a situation where every interception carries both tactical and strategic weight. Another important development is the continued use of mixed attack methods. Instead of relying solely on ballistic missiles, Iran appears to be integrating drones, possibly cruise missiles, and different classes of ballistic systems into coordinated waves. This creates multiple layers of incoming threats, each requiring different responses. Defense systems must prioritize. And in that prioritization, vulnerabilities can emerge. Lower-cost drones, for example, may not be as destructive individually, but when used in large numbers, they can force the use of interceptors or create distractions that allow more advanced missiles to penetrate defenses. This is a classic saturation strategy, but applied with increasing sophistication. At the same time, regional dynamics are becoming more complex. There are growing concerns that this conflict could expand beyond the immediate actors. Activity in surrounding areas, including increased alerts and defensive measures in neighboring countries, suggests that the risk of spillover is being taken seriously. Global powers are also closely monitoring the situation. Calls for restraint are expected, but the effectiveness of such calls depends on whether both sides see value in de-escalation. At the moment, neither side appears willing to step back. Economically, the impact is beginning to take shape. Energy markets are reacting to the uncertainty. Even the perception of risk in key shipping routes can influence prices and supply chains. Companies involved in logistics and trade are adjusting routes, delaying shipments, or increasing security measures. These adjustments come with costs, and those costs ripple outward. Financial markets, already sensitive to geopolitical instability, are showing signs of volatility. Investors tend to react quickly to uncertainty, and prolonged conflict introduces multiple unknowns. Another dimension to consider is technological adaptation. The use of maneuverable and potentially hypersonic systems is forcing a reevaluation of existing defense models. Traditional interception strategies rely on prediction, calculating where a missile will be based on its trajectory. But when that trajectory can change, prediction becomes more difficult. This does not make interception impossible, but it does make it more complex, and complexity introduces risk. In response, there may be increased emphasis on alternative defense methods. Systems like directed energy weapons, including laser-based interception, are often discussed as potential solutions due to their lower cost per use. However, these systems are still in development or early deployment stages. They are not yet a complete solution. This means that, for now, conventional interceptors remain the primary defense. Which brings the situation back to the issue of supply and demand. Every day this conflict continues, resources are being consumed. Missiles are being launched. Interceptors are being used. Equipment is being tested under real-world conditions, and in some cases, damaged. This creates a dynamic where time itself becomes a factor. The longer the conflict continues, the more pressure builds on both sides, but in different ways. For Iran, maintaining the ability to launch strikes consistently is key. Even at reduced volumes, continued activity demonstrates capability and intent. For Israel, maintaining a high interception rate while managing resources is critical. Both sides are operating under constraints, and both are adapting. Another important factor is information. In modern conflicts, information flows rapidly, but not always clearly. Reports, statements, and claims can vary, and verification can take time. This creates an environment where perception can be as influential as reality. If one side is perceived as gaining an advantage, it can affect morale, decision-making, and even international responses. This is why messaging remains controlled and strategic. Both sides are not only engaging militarily, but also shaping narratives. Looking ahead, several possible scenarios are being discussed by analysts. One possibility is continued controlled escalation, where both sides engage in ongoing strikes, but avoid actions that would trigger a broader regional war. Another possibility is a sharp escalation triggered by a high-impact event, such as a significant strike on critical infrastructure or a large number of casualties. A third possibility is external involvement, where additional countries become directly engaged, either militarily or through increased support. Each scenario carries different risks, and at this stage, it is not clear which direction the conflict will take. What is clear is that the nature of this conflict is evolving. It is no longer defined solely by geography or traditional military engagements. It involves technology, economics, infrastructure, and strategy at multiple levels, and it is unfolding in real time. The decisions made in the coming hours and days will be critical, not just for the immediate outcome, but for the longer-term trajectory. Because once a conflict reaches this level of complexity, it becomes harder to contain and easier to escalate. For now, the situation remains tense, active, and uncertain. And as both sides continue to assess their next moves, the world is watching closely. Because what happens next will not just determine the outcome of this conflict, it may shape the future of how conflicts are fought.